naked shamanism. Welcome to With Insights Radio. I'm your host, Iggy Garcia. I will take you on a journey across the universe through shamanism, metaphysical, and holistic. So sit back and relax and enjoy the show.
All right. Welcome. Good evening, everybody. It's 8 o'clock Eastern Time here in Columbus, Ohio. I'm Iggy Garcia, and I want to welcome everybody to the Naked Shaman, Iggy Garcia, here live on the internet, live around the world. Today our show is going to be about miracles. So I'm really going to ask people to kind of call in or suggest to type me in some things about, things that happened to them, some miracles that happened in their lives. But today I just want to light this candle. This candle is the orange candle. It represents creativity, justice, legal matters, joy, ambition, opportunity, and celebration. So let's remember everybody in our families, in our lives. Try to light a candle, especially on Mondays. It's tradition in Latin American tradition to light candles for our family members who have transitioned and passed away, in ordering them to transition into the new spaces of heaven or wherever they go. Usually it's they go into purgatory. So the Catholic belief is that there's a purgatory, and that's our waiting space for us to be called into heaven. And so that's what I'm doing today. I'm just lighting the candle, the orange one, to honor and to hold space for my loved ones and my ancestors and acknowledge their existence for being here on this planet. So this candle will burn through the evening. But also we like to also light some sage. This is actually sage with lavender. So this is a nice blend that my friend Adriana taught me how to do a while back. She mixed them too. It almost smells like vanilla. When you light it, it smells pretty good. So I love that smell. Clear the energy. Ground us a little bit here, or a lot. Get us our energy into the right frame of mind, right focus, be where we need to be. Feels really good. I love this stuff. For those of you who make your own sage, this is a nice blend to consider making. Lavender and sage. Good stuff. We'll let that burn through the evening there. I'm going to move this over here so it's not in my way. And I'll light that from time to time. But, yeah, so hopefully everybody's doing okay. Everybody's doing well. Let's see. Just make sure all my connections are on par there. It looks like they are. Looks like we're doing good. So, yeah, really good. I want to say hello to everybody who's online. I believe I see Jan is on there. Lonnie's on there. There's a few other people on there. So just want to say hi to you guys. Give you little likes and say hello to you. I want to welcome everybody to the show. We are here. We are live. And we're going to be talking a little bit about just life in general. That's kind of how it works. We try to get on the ideas of what's happening in the world, and there's a lot going on right now energetically in this big blue marble. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of anxiety. There's been a lot of transits, and there's been a lot of astrological events happening. So we're going into a lot of retrogrades and a lot of planet stationings and stuff. So those of you who are into that understand what I'm talking about. I don't claim to be an astrologer because I'm not. If you were here last week on the show, my friend Mark Matheny was here. He was explaining a little bit what was happening, what was going on, and can explain why we're all feeling kind of the way we are. Just because, there's a lot happening energetically there in outer space, in out there space. So for me, I had a good weekend. Kind of hung out with my friends, and we were doing the free hugs there, camping at a Confest, and then did some other events as well. And then we kind of hung out and just kind of had fun with it. But today I wanted to talk a little bit about just our own individual lives and how we or moving through life and what we're doing and what's happening and what's going on and what miracles happen in your life. What miracles are going on in your life that you would want to share with the group. If you want to call me, it's 646-595-3440. That's the call-in number. If you want to come online on the camera, I can bring you on the camera as well. We can talk on this camera. I can bring you on, and we can do that as well. But the thing is, miracles are miracles everywhere. And if you've been around me long enough, you know that one of my favorite sayings is that we're all miracles. You're all a miracle. Each one of us is a miracle. Just the sheer chance of us being able to be here, every single one of us, is a miracle in itself. And the way that plays out, because it's a, trillion-and-one chance that you're going to make it out of all that, all that chaos that happens as your, parents are having sex and they're doing the thing, and then the egg meeting the sperm and how many sperms, and it's a very fine line between which sperm breaks the barrier and, gets the touchdown or whatever you want to call it, gets to the egg and gives genetic code to the next offspring. It's a very fine line. It's very close. It's very, it's very, sometimes just a matter of milliseconds before one or the other breaks that barrier. So if life can be hard and life is difficult, I guess that's a good way to look at it, that, that you are a miracle in yourself, that you are that person, that you're not just by chance. There's no chance in what you are and how you got here. Why you're here is yet to be determined. And until the very last breath you take, you're still creating. You're still developing. You're still doing your thing. So you never stop. And I know sometimes in life can be very hectic and can be very crazy and can seem very cumbersome at times. But there's also some really amazing things that happen in life. We have the opportunity to, define and redefine who we are and how we interpret ourselves and how we look at ourselves and how other people may see us. And people always see us completely different how we see ourselves, and that's normal, and that'll always be, even to the day we die. But the miracle is that we have the opportunity to change how we perceive ourselves. The perceptions of how we perceive ourselves are probably more important than how other people see us. But as human beings, we have that vulnerability where we like to know how other people see us and how other people feel about us. And that's important to us because that's how we can actually gauge, how we're moving through life and how things are happening and what we're doing and how we're moving and what's going on. And for a lot of us, we're not able to, break those two things apart and be able to see them differently. But I'm here to tell you that, it's part of the journey. It's part of the process of being a human being to have ups and downs, to go through these things. But in the process, there's things that happen to us. There's things that occur to us. There's things that, happen to us that, just don't have any explanation. They just don't have any way of, making sense. There's no concise, way to interpret what just occurred, what is happening. And, for many of us, we go through life, wondering how we got here and how we survived. Some of you, I'm sure tons of you here online are able to give me tons of stories about things that happened to you, things that occurred to you, things that would just defy, physics, defy, reality and all kinds of stuff and how that would work out. But for those of you who want to share and those of you who are willing and open to, want to talk about that, you can call me at 646-595-3440, or I can bring you online as well. I can bring you online through the camera feature on the camera feature there on Facebook. So you let me know. Just type in that you want to have a conversation with me and share with me, and that'd be great. But I'm going to start this story out, and I'm going to have to bring a little more stage because the story's pretty deep and pretty profound. Yeah, because I really need to stay grounded in this process, because when we're talking about these kind of things, it's super, super important that you feel that, you're able to release, because part of sometimes going through a miracle stage and a miracle in your life, it could come across kind of traumatic. It can come across very, very powerful, very strong. And the story that I'm going to share with you, so we can get the ball rolling a little bit, is about how I ended up on this plane and how I ended up on this 3D world with you, and how we're all connected and how life works its things out. If some of you who follow me a little bit on Facebook, you probably saw that I posted a video not too long ago. I think it was last week, I believe it came out. And this video was about a baby who was born by cesarean section, C-section. And but the embryonic sac didn't break. It didn't bust. So the baby was still inside. So if you catch that video, let me see if I can pull it up here and give you the exact date so you can find it, because it's really interesting, because it goes along with the story that I'm about to tell you. The story about how Iggy Garcia ended up here on planet Earth. Okay, so see if I can pull that up real fast, and I think I'm getting closer to it. And I think let's get past the Space Force stuff that we put up here. And, yeah, where are you? Where are you, article? Because that article resonates with me. Resonates with me a lot. A lot. Because it's kind of my story. So there it is. I found it. Okay, that was June 20th. I think I shared it at 7:42. And the story is, this is the best example that I can give you about how delicate life is, how delicate things are with each one of us. Okay, and I share my stories because sometimes our stories are similar. You might find, oh yeah, Iggy, that happened to me too. Oh wow, that's pretty cool. I never knew that was even possible. And there's a lot of things we don't know that are possible. They just happen. So I'm going to take you back in time, because my dad, this is the reason I want to do the show, is because my dad kind of brought it up the other day, and we were driving, and we were going to the bank, to his credit union, the Kimba Credit Union down on High Street, which he's part of another credit union. They have a co-op where they do stuff, but they wouldn't take his money. They wouldn't do a co-op because there was something wrong with his account or whatever. To make a long story short, I decided, well, let's go to the other credit union. It's on the other side of town. It's a little further away, but he wasn't treated right. He didn't feel well, and how they took care of him. And so we ended up going to Hilliard Rome Road. There's his credit unions over there, and we deposited the money and whatever. But as we were driving there, and this is where the story comes in, he started talking about how he was on a vacation with my mom. They were on a little trip in some part of Peru there, and my mom was having these severe pains, and the nearest hospitals were not close, because people like to go to the hospitals they're familiar with, kind of like their dentists or whatever they go to. They like to keep everything very close, and they like to be in proximity of where they are. So he made it all the way back. He remembers telling me he was carrying my mom. He was carrying my mother. And, she still had like 4 months to go in her pregnancy. And he's carrying her down this hill, and he gets on the bus, and there's no Uber, there's no taxi in the sense like we would have today, technology-wise. So he carried her. He picked her up, and he carried her. And then he finally got her to the hospital. And as he had called somebody before he left, and he had told his family that he was on his way, and they were all looking for them. But he made it to the hospital. And he remembers the doctor saying that they're going to have to do an operation on my mom, because her appendix was about to rupture, and the doctor wasn't sure if he could save me in that process. He didn't know if that was even a possibility. And so they took a chance. They took, they had to take the appendix out. So there was no getting away from that. So they ended up taking me in this, and I was still in the sac, embryonic sac, and then was in there, and luckily it didn't break. And they would kick me in a solution that was kind of warm, and this warmth, keeps you keeps you alive. You're alive. You're still connected. And they're having the surgery on my mom at the same time. And as they're having a surgery on taking out her appendix before it ruptures, because it was about to like explode, my dad said. And I'm outside the body. I'm outside her body, and there was no guarantee that I would survive. I still had 4 more months to go. There was 4 more months to go. And that 4 months, I was still developing, as a baby. And then after the surgery, they had to put me back in. They still didn't know if I would survive because just because the way there's fluid build up, and then there's swelling and all kinds of things. And so they put me back in, and I survived. And so for my mom and dad, I'm their miracle. I'm kind of like their miracle child. I survived this operation. Survived. It's probably a normal thing nowadays, but in that time, my dad said it wasn't very common. It was very risky. And here I am. And those are the miracles that I'm talking about. Life. Why does someone get the chance to keep moving on, keep able to do the things they need to do, or be able to be in that place? I could have easily perished, but I didn't. So the story's not about me if I perish or wouldn't. The story is that at that particular moment, through prayer and through ceremony and through all the different things that my father and my mother did, I was able to sustain and still be alive. I came out of the womb, entering light, entering, everything. I don't even know what I remember. I can't really remember what was going on because probably too small, too young. But all that was happening to me. All that stuff was going on with me at that moment in time. I was going through this process, this metamorphosis and this change. My mom is struggling to stay alive, and to keep me from, dying. And that's a miracle. And so I guess that's what I'm talking about, miracles. And I know some of you have stories about how you survived. There are other stories that I have too, and I don't want to be the only one sharing stories tonight. But miracles happen all the time. I was watching a YouTube video where my grandma and her grandson were walking down the road on a snow-covered day, and this car lost control and hit the ice patch, and they both got run over, by the car. And you're watching the video, and you're watching, you go, oh my God, how is this possible? What are they going to do? How are they going to survive? But they both survived. The little boy had no injuries whatsoever. The grandmother had sustained a little bit of injury, but other than that, she was pretty fine. Destiny's one of the things, when's our number called? And I was thinking, like, man, how did they survive that? They weren't. Was it because of the snow, the ice? I don't know, but it was amazing. It's just those are the miracles in life. Those are those things that you can't explain. Those are those things that just happen to people all the time. You hear stories about people all the time getting stranded, and then all of a sudden an angel appears. An angel could be somebody who just comes at the right time, at the right moment, and helps them with their car or whatever. And the thing is, we don't live in those worlds anymore like we used to, where we expect things to, for miracles and things to happen. I'm hoping that, we are able to share our stories, and by sharing our stories, we can grow and we can share, we can do things and move into that space where we will allow things to happen and allow things to, manifest and create. Because think about it, you as a miracle, you are a miracle in yourself, and you are here, and you create miracles just by being who you are and inviting people into your life. And people who are into your life, they're able to do things and function and do and accept and feel. Okay, so either way, those are miracles. And I know my mom's had tons of things that happened to her. And, my poor mother, she's since passed, but she's had so many things that she shouldn't have been able to get as far as she has in life as she has. And she did. And, there's countless stories. But I want to hear your stories. I want to hear what you have to share. I want to see what you have. Because, by sharing your stories with us, we can learn from one another, and we can learn. And, by doing that, we can share. I mean, this Wednesday coming up at my Sage Place, we're going to be talking around the fire. We're going to be talking and sharing stories, and that's at 6 to 9:30. We're going to be there talking and sharing and being in ceremony with one another. and doing the things that we want to do and sharing the things we want to do. But you're each one of us is here, and we all have a destiny. We all have a purpose, and that purpose is, to tell our story. And by sharing our stories, we do well. And when we share our stories, it gives hope to other people, and other people have tons of stories to share. I know that I have tons of stories to share, and those stories that I share are, for me, they're magical to me, and maybe they're not magical to you, but they are important, and they are vital. So with that, I just want to say, give me a call at 646-595-3440, and maybe we can talk a little bit. You can tell me your story and share your story, get you online. And I'll be really surprised if nobody calls and doesn't have a magical story or how they were able to circumvent or able to survive or be part of or just witness something. I mean, a miracle isn't something that just has to be something where it just affects it. A miracle could be things that happen on the grand scale, where we watch, things, develop and things, come out and become better. Either way, that's what I wanted to share with you today about miracles. That miracles they're everywhere when we look. And when those miracles occur and when those miracles happen, they change us forever. They are able to, to put us in a frame of mind that completely changes us, completely opens our heart, completely opens our spirit to feel that. Now, I don't want to make it or cheapen or anything, but it is, a miracle is one of those things that just, it defies everything that we know about how we see the world and how things aren't supposed to be or how things shouldn't work out, but they do. And that's what's really cool about, when we allow things like that to come into our lives. And we have to be open to the process of inviting miracles into our lives and to witness things. Some people think that's just destiny. That's the way things are going to be. I don't think it's that cut and dry. I think it's very simple and very quick, yes, but the miracles that we create are the miracles that are inside of our spirit and our soul and the things that we manifest and create. Each day, just waking up each day is a miracle. Each day is for some people, it's one of the most amazing things to do. For other people, it's just something normal. But some of us have some very serious ailments and some very serious things that, we're grateful to just wake up the next day and say, hey, you know what? I'm here. I'm taking my next breath. And that's important. So think about what may happen in your life. You may say, hey, well, Iggy, and I don't remember anything really happened to me like that. I don't remember anything of that caliber going on in my life. Well, maybe there is. Maybe there are some things that have occurred in your life. You just maybe don't remember, and some things that you probably don't want to share because you probably don't think it's a miracle. But miracles are very unique, very special, and they're very personal, and I understand that. And by them being very personal, meaning that they're ingrained in our spirit and our soul, and they're part of who we are and how it molds us and how it creates and how it puts us in that frame of mind. Miracles are one of those things, and it's pretty powerful. So I just want you to be able to share that moment with you, and I wanted to share that story with you because I thought it was really powerful. Because as my dad was telling me that story, I was driving, and I had to pull over because I was just too emotional. I just started crying. It was too much energy to take in and to share and to talk about. And I hope that I'm able to process and transition through the things that I have to with the loss of my mom. And I know she's been on my mind a lot lately. And there's been a lot going on in my life lately that has caused a lot of, energetically, for me to feel a certain way, to, just feel disconnected from the people that are in my life. But, the people in my life are important. And the people who challenge my life, and I want to say hello to everybody. And, people who challenge my life are very, are just as important. And, there's been a lot of things, I've seen personally, I've seen angels. I've seen things happen to people. I've seen where people have just spontaneously healed. I've seen where people have created, a better scenario for themselves just because they believed. And, this is the time where we have to believe in miracles again. This is a time where we have to, say, hey, you know what? There is more. There is more to this, and I'm going to embrace and invite miracles into my life. Because without them, we just go through life, and it's just every day. And I try to look for the smallest things. Sometimes just watching a flower bloom for me is a miracle, and watch that process occur. It's very powerful. But today's kind of a bizarre world moment for me. Like last week was a little hard for me. It was a little tough. It was just seemed like there was a lot happening, a lot going on. And tomorrow I get to drum with a bunch of kids tomorrow in Mount Orba, Ohio. We're gonna be doing a drum circle there, and a lot of these kids have never been around drum circles. So for me, that's an opportunity to share, my story, my medicine, my miracles, my life stories with them. And I'm not really looking for anything particular. I just want to have the process play out and do what it needs to do. Because it's amazing when you watch these kids, and kids, it doesn't matter where they're from. It doesn't matter if they're rich, poor, middle class. When you put that drum out there, it just creates synergy, and that synergy and that co-creation starts to work. So those are the miracles that I run into, and I've had tons of miracles where I've seen people just spontaneously their lives change because of the drumming that I facilitate. I've seen people who haven't been able to function, and just because someone cared and someone reached out, someone wanted to make a difference in life, that changed their life. And so I'm grateful that I'm part of those opportunities and part of those situations to be able to see people go through that and work through that process. So I just want to say, I don't have a whole lot to say today. I don't have a whole lot to talk about today. Sometimes we're like that. Sometimes we get in that place and we get into that space. But I do want to thank everybody for tuning in. I know this is probably going to be a short show, but when you're not in the flow, when you're not in that rhythm, you can't really fake it. And I'm not going to fake it. I'm not going to pretend like things are good. I'm going to just say thank you for listening to what I had to share, even for this little half hour, because it means a lot to me. It's important to me. And I don't know. You guys just be well. Do what you have to do. I'm going to cut the live stream off, and I'm going to go right into another show on the radio, because I'll continue there. But those of you on the live stream, I want to say bye to you guys. Love you very much. Thanks for being here. All right. So the live show is over, so we're going to go here, and I'm going to put on a past show just because I have a little bit of time left, and I need to do that. And I want to do that. See which one am I going to put on. Let's go back to... All right, we're going to go to this show here. We're going to go to this show here.
Support for this podcast comes from Root. Root, that's ROOT, is a new kind of car insurance with rates based on your driving, not just your demographics. If you agree that car insurance should be based on how you actually drive, download the app and let Root's algorithms deliver you a personalized quote. Good drivers can save up to $784. Go to joinroot.com/drive and get $25 when you get a Root quote. That's joinroot.com/drive.
Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to WithinSightsRadio.com with Iggy Garcia and Rosa Bell on the Blog Talk Radio Network.
Good evening, everybody. This is Rosa Bell and Iggy Garcia, my brother.
Good evening. Good evening.
Online with us. So, how are you doing, Iggy? Long time no talk.
Yeah, long time.
What, 24 hours ago, maybe? No, more than that.
Yeah.
Less than that.
Less than that.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, how was your day today? I know Monday and all.
Really relaxed and refreshed. We had a really nice, powerful sweat lodge on Sunday. Rejuvenated, feel awesome.
Yeah, definitely. I was hoping you were going to bring that up because it was the money of sweats, and yesterday was, for me, I experienced some just different things. You know, every sweat is different, of course, and you know, I went in there with the intention of experiencing, connecting to unconditional love, and well, I did that. So, I mean, I do that every day. A Spirit kind of has taught me to get a little sense of humor because, you know, every day has an opportunity to experience unconditional love. It's just how we choose to perceive it and focus our awareness on. Because sometimes we tend to focus on, well, it's just not good enough, or wait a second, that's unconditional love? Wow, that hurts, or, you know. So it was a really, really moving sweat for me. It was, and all the people contribute all their energies when you're in a sweat, in a group sweat. You know, you never know you're gonna hear when you're sweating. You know, I don't have a planned agenda as far as, you know, what I'm going to say. I speak what I'm led to say, and that's how it unfolds.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, real powerful, especially when you go to all the different rounds and the different doors, and you know, it's just an amazing experience. If you've never done a sweat lodge, folks, you'll have to try it sometime. It's just one of those magical places that you just kind of get in a little spaceship and just fly away. That's the way I look at it.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Actually, we had some really new people to the sweat. Usually people have an idea of what a sweat lodge is and what that involves. And we had a couple new people walk through the yard, and I just felt like, hey, I needed to introduce myself, and I did. And they're like, you know, what are we doing? I asked them, I said, so, you know, hey, welcome. They're like, so what are we doing? I'm like, so you don't know why you're here? And they're like, no, we really don't know. And I really appreciate their honesty because they really had no clue as to what they were going to experience. I mean, I didn't want to project my experiences onto them, so I try to keep it as neutral as possible, telling them that this is medicinal, actual physical properties to a sweat. You know, a sweat is equivalent to, I think you shared with me, 30 days of fasting. That's what it does to detoxify your system. Then there's a spiritual aspect. There's a spiritual aspect to it, and that's the part that they had no clue about, really. The spiritual aspect, and they said they'd never participated in anything spiritual before. And I kind of chuckled because we experience spirituality every day and everything. Spirit isn't everything.
Look out the window. Yep, absolutely.
But it was so interesting to just explain it in a way that I wasn't like giving them too much of a preconceived idea based on my experiences of the past, and sharing them just kind of like the facts. And, you know, you gave them a little piece of corn before we started, and they're like, what's this for? And I said, oh, this is more symbolic, blah, 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 and so forth. But I thought it was just really, it was like dealing with interacting with like a childlike mind, which is really beautiful.
Yep. I mean, the whole process of the sweat lodge is, you know, bringing the masculine and feminine together. Because when you have males and females sweating, I mean, the whole thing just, you know, is just magical because it's not one-sided. When females just sweat, you know, there's a certain aspect, and when males sweat alone, there's a certain aspect. But when you bring both parties in together, it's amazing what happens, because a lot of people, you know, don't realize that we're all one. You know, in the darkness, when it's pitch black and in that heat, there's no separation, absolutely at all. I mean, we're all in it together, and we all suffer together, and we all sweat together. And that's what the sweat lodge has been for me, you know, just to learn different aspects of myself that I, you know, maybe was not aware of at the time. You know, I was not, like, you know, consciously aware of. And when you bring them both together, you know, you can't have one without the other because you'll have a little bit of imbalance. I try to bring things into harmony for myself personally.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, you know, my husband actually participated in sweat. It's okay. He's here, and he knows I'm not sharing anything that he probably wouldn't share himself. he came in with the intention. He goes, I don't even know I'm here. And I kind of chuckled, and I'm thinking that is so typical. And again, it's refreshing that people can, be honest and maybe not really understand why exactly they might be participating. Their higher self, at some level, I believe, anyways, has guided them to that sacred ceremony for some reason.
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
your logical, because he's an engineer, the logical part of him may not be able to see it, but his higher self is like, always showing up. It's funny. It's kind of trailing the kicking and screaming part along with him, but it was good.
Right.
And he's like, I have a little bit of a headache. I had to go home, early. He left the fourth round right when it was, And I said, well, I said, I can't, tell you why, and you're experiencing that. He goes, you don't have a headache, aren't you? I'm like, no, I'm actually very peaceful. And and there's, perhaps there's a part of him that's just resisting, maybe. And but he was sharing with me that he had a challenge. He was saying, white man can't drum and talk at the same time, because he was Iggy had given him the duty to keep the heartbeat while we were in the lodge, and he was like working really hard to keep that heartbeat going, and he's like, it was just an interesting experience. And I said, well, that's great. You got to experience that, or whatever, So it's kind of funny just to reflect on the day, because it's a long day. I mean, we're there from 9 in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, actually working towards building this ceremony.
Yeah. And I guess it leads us right into what we're doing about spirituality.
Absolutely.
And, the divine feminine and the different aspects of the universe. And why don't you introduce our guest, Rosa?
Sure. We have an amazing guest tonight on With Insights Radio, Peter Canova. And I'll tell you a little bit about him. But I think that I'd like for him to share with us his journey. So I won't really talk about too much of his background, but he is going to be speaking to us about a book that he wrote. It's actually it's a trilogy, and we were just informed that the Pope Annalisa has won 2 Nautilus Awards. So we're in for an amazing treat here on With Insights Radio to be speaking with Peter tonight. Peter, we're going to be having a wonderful conversation. He's going to be sharing how he got on this journey, and also, by all means, we want to hear all about the book, because it's quite an interesting topic. Being raised Catholic, it piqued my interest. So we'll see if we can't get Peter on With Insights here.
Mr. Canova, are you with us there?
Yes. Hi, Iggy. Hi, Rosa. It's nice to be with you today, and it's also nice to realize I'm not the only one who's sweating, although it's because I'm in the California desert.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. If you don't mind giving us a little bit of a background, it sounds like you have a very similar background as far as you're an intuitive. You do medical readings and involved with psychokinesis. And I burned some incense in my studio, and it's just a little bit overpowering here. So please, if you don't mind, just kind of giving us some background, how Spirit led you on your journey thus far and got you to this point of writing this amazing book.
Sure. Well, I started off, I guess, as one of those kind of introspective, alienated feeling teenagers, and although that's not really uncommon, I guess what was uncommon was me was kind of an obsession, in that I always sort of sensed that something seemed to be a little bit wrong about the world. I kind of wondered why the world wasn't really a better place. So it always made me, I guess, a little bit inquisitive and a little bit of a seeker. And this was back in, I'm dating myself here, but it was back in the 1970s that I came across a group that used to be very active back then. It was called Silva Mind Control. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
Well, it was actually a terrific organization. I think remnants of it kind of still are around even today, but essentially it was a program to teach you how to use your intuitive faculties, which they would have called ESP back then in the 70s. And I went through the week of the course, and in the very last day was a day that they they did intuitive medical readings, and they would have index cards that were brought in by all the people who went through the course, and I think it was almost 500,000 people that attended those courses back in the 70s. So they had a big file of index cards of people who had either some kind of a physical or psychological issue, and you would bring in the name of a friend or a relative who might have a problem. You'd write the information down on the cards. Well, on the final day of the course, we would have two people that would go off in pairs. One of them would be holding the index card, and the only thing that they were able to tell you was the name, age, and location of the person on the card. They weren't allowed to say anything else to you. Now, the person who was doing the intuitive reading would be asked a couple of questions. The lead-off question was, what can you tell me about this person? And I remember very clearly the very first case I did. It was an elderly gentleman down in Miami. They just gave me his name and age. And I saw immediately I got an outline, almost think of like an X-ray screen. And I got an outline of him, and I was immediately attracted to the area of the heart. And it looked like his heart was rather tilted at a funny angle, which was causing the aorta to be pinched. And so I said to the person, well, the first thing I see is it seems like this gentleman has a blockage in his aorta. And they're allowed to say, yes, we have that information, or no, we don't have that information. They can't clue you or hint you in any way. So they said, yes, we have that information here. What else can you tell us? And I saw what appeared to be something metallic down the bottom quadrant of the heart. And I said, well, it looks to me like he's had something implanted like a pacemaker. And they said, that's correct, he has a pacemaker. Can you tell us what year the pacemaker was installed? And I saw the hands of a clock moving. They were just spinning around wildly, and then they stopped dead at 10 o'clock, which to me indicated 10 years earlier. So we were in 1975, and I said, well, I believe the pacemaker was installed in 1965, and that was correct. From that point on, I found that I had a facility at doing these intuitive readings, but the larger picture that it presents to me was such an eye-opener and a relief, and it started to answer a lot of my questions, because I really realized that we are all connected at an unseen level. We have a common source in another dimension, because how else could I possibly know this type of information unless I was tapping into a more universal source? So the very fact that I was seeing these things and they were being verified in the objective world was a tremendous boost to me spiritually, because I said, you know what, I now pass from the realm of theory into experience. I've experienced this, and this is something that I'll never let go of.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and then from there, I happened to have my work in those days carried me all over the world. I was on 4 continents, and I was in Asia, the Near East, Africa, Europe, and wherever I would go, it was really kind of peculiar, because unsolicited, I would have literally people coming up to me in the streets as if they knew me, and they're saying, "Oh, you're the, you're the boy who can see things," and so forth. And I had a variety of, I don't know what you call them, guru, shaman, or whatever, that just sort of sought me out, and it was like I was a magnet for attracting these folks, and talking with them, kind of furthered my spiritual growth. And also those travels were really, I didn't realize it at the time, but they were going to become the basis of the book and the trilogy that I wrote, or at least the basis of much of the underpinning of those books.
Indeed. So as you traveled, what got you to? What was the catalyst that got you to writing as a child? Were you always somebody that expressed yourself with written word?
I'd always had a facility for talking with people and using the written word, especially persuasively. And in the business I was in, I handled, among other things, marketing for our companies, and I was used to using the language for those purposes. But I'd always, I guess for a long time, I wanted to write. I was successful in the business world, but it wasn't a world that made me very happy. It was more like I was conscripted into what started off as a family business, and it morphed into something bigger. But I was sort of tracked onto that, but another part of me was always tugging on the sidelines. And I started going to writers' conferences while I was still working, just to just to sort of see what the writing world was about. And on the first couple of things I wrote at the writers' conferences, I won a couple of awards, which gave me a little bit of confidence that I might have some ability to write something that made sense to people other than myself. And then I was in a writing class one day, or a screenwriting class, and the instructor came in and said, I want you to do a high concept idea and bring it in tomorrow. And by high concept idea, she meant something that really had not been done before. I found that a pretty challenging task because almost everything we do or write is a permutation of something else. But I started thinking along lines saying, well, okay, what haven't we seen before? And I guess because I was a spiritually oriented person, I started thinking, well, we've never seen a female pope before, and what would that be like? What would the world be like? What would the church be like? What would things be like if a female ever became pope? So I started to think along those lines, and then because of the fact that I had lived in Africa, and there were certain themes that I started to arrive at in the book that seemed to segue really well with an African scenario, I decided to set the book in Africa, using an African nun as the primary character. So it was that sort of led me along that track. And then the book actually was written the first book was actually written over a period of about 10 years. But that was not consistent writing. It was part-time while I was traveling around on airplanes. My work was very time-consuming, didn't leave a lot of time and energy for writing, so I'd just write little snippets whenever I could. But my wife became ill, and she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I stopped work for almost a year in order to take care of her. And it was during that period of time, there was a lot of, obviously, emotion attached to a situation like that. And so the information was coming through me in a rather startling way. I burnt out 5 computers just by standing next to them. I had so much electrical energy coming through with it. But the information that came through was a lot of the information that formed, the real spiritual heart of this book during that period of time. And then it took that was about 2 years. I really wrote the formative part of the book, and then when I retired from my business about 2 years ago, I put the finishing touches on it.
Cool. I was curious, you say the reign of man has ended. I was really curious about that. That kind of jumps out at me a lot. I kind of watched your YouTube videos, and you're kind of explaining about the different aspects of God and the separation. You were talking about Sophia. You weren't talking about it. The video was talking about it, Sophia and Christ. I was curious. Can you talk a little bit how this? I know you're talking about a female pope here. I get that. I understand that. But I'll kind of maybe backtrack a little bit and kind of talk to the listeners a bit about the religious aspects of this book.
The religious aspects?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I'd say it's not a religious book. It's actually a book about spirit transcending religion, and it's also not a Catholic book. The Catholic Church and the Pope are the vehicle for telling a broader story that I think has universal appeal to everybody. So I wouldn't have anybody get too afraid by the title and think that this is a book only for Catholics. It's part of a trilogy, incidentally, called The First Souls. And The First Souls is an epic saga about the first souls to incarnate into material experience from the spirit realm. And the trilogy traces their lives over different epochs of history, beginning with the first book, Pope Annalisa.
That's cool.
When I in my meditations, and the book itself is really a combination of several streams. It's my own channeling, my own meditations, a lot of research, 25 years or more of research. And one of the things I noticed is that there was a universal spiritual tradition that really formed the underpinning of not only the major religions that we have today, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, and so forth, Buddhism, but it also was very common to what were known as the mystery schools in the ancient world. Mystery schools, the most famous ones were probably that Europeans or Westerners would know were at Delphi in Greece or Cumae in Italy. There were a number of them all throughout Egypt and really all throughout the ancient world. And you can think of these mystery schools as almost basically spiritual universities, like an Ivy League of spirituality, and they all had a number of things in common with each other. And this tradition was not really a religion, but it was more a spiritual orientation that runs through most religions. And it was it's a little complex, but a very abbreviated description would really tell us that human beings are physical entities that are containing projections of God's own spiritual essence. Now, that is something radically different from what most of us as Christians or Judeo-Christian tradition were taught to believe, which is that human beings were sort of this kind of lump of clay that God created, ex nihilo, or out of nothing, and were somehow granted life force. But the fact that the divine intelligence and the divine essence actually dwells within each human being, I think, is a very empowering notion that makes us really, in theory, much more than we think we are. And this whole idea was sort of, I guess, without going into too much detail and putting everybody to sleep, this idea was really probably the underpinning of this ancient spiritual tradition, which was very feminine in orientation, incidentally, using the intuitive, creative type of the feeling-based sort of thinking that is more characteristic of the feminine way. And it was part of early Christianity, and it's a legacy that was really destroyed by the church. And what I might speak about, if you have a minute, is how we maybe recovered how we maybe recovered some knowledge of this tradition.
Yes.
Yeah. Some of the listeners may be familiar with some of the finds that occurred back in the deserts of the Middle East in the 1940s. One of the big ones was the Nag Hammadi Gospels, which were called the Gnostic Gospels. And the Gnostic Gospels were, some of them actually were almost incorporated into the Synoptic Gospels, but at the end of the day they were outlawed and branded as heresy by the church. But Gnostics were essentially, Gnostics comes from the Greek word to know, and the Gnostics were a long line of mystics who were pre-Christian and Christian. When Christianity came along, they readily embraced the Christian story, but they had a different take on it than Orthodox Christianity. One of the things, a couple of the characteristics of the Gnostic Gospels is that rather than the male disciples and St. Peter being sort of the leader amongst the disciples, it gives a picture of the female disciples who we've lost in history, and Mary Magdalene being the foremost disciple rather than Peter. The one who really got Jesus's very deep spiritual esoteric message, whereas most of the males didn't really understand the essence of it. The other interesting thing, and Iggy, you kind of alluded to this when you were talking about the sweat lodges, about the male and female energies. Jesus in the Gnostic Gospels always emphasizes one thing: the two must become one. And what he meant was that the universe, the apparent universe, is composed of polar energies that we can call male and female, and that in order for us to become whole human beings, we have to incorporate those energies within each of us so that we balance our linear, rational thinking side with our intuitive, heartfelt side, and that by using those faculties together, we can then really unlock the divine potential within all of us and have very particular experiences. Much like I told you I had when I was doing the intuitive medical readings, they unlock actual experiences within you that really have you say, now I know there's something divine out there. It's not fear anymore, but I've gone through it. I've felt the light. I've walked through it.
Wow. I love the way this conversation is unfolding because it's bringing me into alignment with a lot of my own belief systems. So, not that I would not be okay with that, but I just happen to really follow what you're saying with the tone of this book is to bring the awareness of the importance of both, because throughout history the divine feminine has been out of alignment, I guess, in so many of our lives and so many in the collective and so forth. So, this concept is really prominent in this age, as far as with the onset of the 2012 and so forth, because a lot of the energies that I think they're already here, number one, they're going to be in full blown consciousness as time progresses. But this is what we're talking about, I believe, with these new energies. It's really not new. It's just bringing them into balance.
Yes, I think that's true. And another thing I noticed as we near 2012 is that so many people that I talk to in the spiritual community or spiritual circles have kind of made a little bit of a similar transition to what I experienced, which is that a lot of healers who have been doing one-on-one work are saying, you know what, this is great, but what I'd rather do is train a core of other healers to do what I'm doing. I just had the privilege of meeting a gentleman from upstate New York, and he does tremendous energy healing work. And he really has a grand vision of opening up a whole, essentially, academy where he is training people in doing the type of very effective type of energy healing that he's doing. It was the same way with me. I did intuitive medical readings. I didn't charge people in those days. I was just kind of a poor student, and I did it because I had people lined up at the door in those days asking, for help, and I did it. But, I sort of realized later in life that one-on-one work is great, but I think the way I'd really rather help people is to reach a broader audience. And when I looked around, I saw a lot of people doing that in the literary world on a non-fictional basis. So you have, the Wayne Dyers, the Deepak Chopras, the Carolyn Maces, and they're all doing that stuff probably a lot better than I could. But the contribution that I felt that I could make was that, with my writing ability, is to really do a story about that. Even though the story is fictional, it's based on so many historical facts that it's a very practical book that I think can really give people a new perspective on spirit, especially from the standpoint that we've been taught in the Judeo-Christian world that's been kind of drilled into us, that it can get us out of that box and look at our own spiritual life in a completely different way, but at the end of the day, to take responsibility for our own spiritual life and understand what it means to grow spiritually within each of us. So I felt my contribution could be more on a mass level if I wrote a very entertaining, and this, incidentally, this is, everybody that's read it says this is really a page-turner. This is a thriller. So the book is kind of schizophrenic in that it's both something that could be a Hollywood movie, but it's also something that could be very well embraced by the spiritual community.
Absolutely. It's entertaining. It reaches a wide, broad audience. It's going to captures people. The title itself is enough to kind of get you going. Wait, what was that? And wait, she's African American?
Yeah.
Okay. It's enough to make you do a double take, that's for sure. And going back to the, this theme keeps on coming back. Spirit keeps on guiding me to talk about this, this interconnectedness, the fact that we're interconnected with ourselves, but the greater concept too is the fact that we're never disconnected from source or God or universe, whatever you want to call that. The source that created all is something that a lot of times what I find, and this is more of a observation based on my experience, is that oftentimes religions will often act as an intermediary to your spirituality, whereas now I think people are realizing, and through this book as well, is that they can speak directly or have this direct connection because you never was disconnected to begin with.
Yeah, and I think that's very true. And I see a lot of books out there that are religion bashing books. They kind of tee off on the Catholic Church and all the the sins of the past and everything. And sure, there were a lot of things involved there, but I think the way I look at it, and I think the way the ancient Gnostics looked at it, was that the outer religions, what they would call the orthodox or outer part of the religion, was a stepping stone to the deeper inner parts of it. And that's the sort of thrust of my book here. Annalisa does not. Well, I don't want to give away too much of the plot of the book. I was just about to do that by saying something. But I will say that one of the really cool things about this ancient spiritual tradition is it's a marriage of psychic insight with modern science. It's really fascinating that 2,000 years ago, these ancient mystics that practiced this tradition actually came up with insights that parallel our most advanced modern scientific discoveries. Let me give you a couple examples of that. The ancients said that matter is a gross crystallized form of higher energy. Well, that's exactly what the equation E equals mc squared means, that matter and energy are interchangeable. The ancients said that our universe was emanated or projected from a series of what they called eons, which were pre-existing universes. That is the parallel universe theory, that we live side by side with other dimensions. Mm-hmm. The Big Bang, the ancients said the material universe was expelled from 10 or more higher eons or dimensions, and the Big Bang says exactly the same thing, that our visible universe was a contraction of 10 or more dimensions down to 3 dimensions. In the field of psychology, when Carl Jung saw the writings of the Gnostics and the other ancient mystics, he was shocked that so many of their ideas in there predated his depth psychology. That when he first read the Gnostic Gospels, he said, "I finally found a home." Now, how could this be? How could it be that these guys, who some people said, well, maybe these guys were smoking desert weed with all these things they were having out there in the Middle East, but they came up with the same conclusions 2,000 years ago that modern science is making today about the nature of human beings and reality. So clearly what they discovered wasn't fantasy. There's a difference between psychic insight, genuine psychic insight, and fantasy. And they were coming up with truths that they tapped from the universal source that science is now bearing out 2,000 years later. And perhaps we all come closest to the truth at the intersection of where science and those ancient mystics are meeting.
Mm-hmm. It's a good way to take a 30-second break. We take a 30-second break, half point in our show. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. More conversations with Peter Casanova.
You are listening to WithinsightsRadio.com and WithinSights.com, your free online holistic publication resource magazine for achieving self-discovery and inspiration. Please feel free to explore our daily inspirational quotes and uplifting stories, exclusive interviews with local, world-known inspirational leaders.
Welcome back to WithinSightsRadio.com with Iggy Garcia and Rosabelle. And our guest today is Peter Canova, and he is talking to us about his book, Pope Annalisa. And I think we can actually find information at www.popeannalisa.com, and I think that's where you have trailers and stuff there, correct, Peter?
Yes, correct.
It's a really cool website because it has actual video production that's really professional, I have to say, and it's very suspenseful and drama-filled, so definitely check it out for yourself, people. I'll go ahead and put that on the chat here so people know what we're talking about to get more information. So when we took our break, we were just talking about, and I hear this often on With Insights Radio, people who have been involved with spirituality and walks of life. We are kind of saying similar things, just different kind of ways of communicating and expressing ourselves, which I think is really cool. When we boil down to it, I find that, if if we start a conversation with open hearts, open ears, open mind, without any preconceived notion, if you just give a person enough time to express themselves and you just open your heart, you really find out we're all kind of really saying the same thing at the end of the day, for the most part. That's been my experience on the guests that we've had on the show and the themes and so forth. And that's what I'm hearing today, is that with your book, you've chosen to be in service to share what you feel is a great truth, a great, it's just a different way of sharing it, a truth that's been around for ages and ages and ages, but you bring a different spin to it, a different way of communicating with your vehicle of writing. That sounds like very entertaining as far as the way you're you're a good storyteller. I have to tell you that. Just even having a
you.
conversation with you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
You're
thank
welcome.
you. I think that this is something. Well, let me tell you, folks. The writing is a tough business. Don't go into it if you want to make money. I was just doing my tax returns the other day, and the balance sheet was a little crazy. But I think with writing, it's almost something you have to do. It's something that you have a burning desire to share something with other people, and in this case, I wanted to share my experiences that altered the course of my life, in hopes that something in this body of work in the trilogy might trigger that exploration in other people. And I think that people at all different spiritual levels can read this book. I mean, some people will read it and they'll just like the story. Other people will read it really for the spiritual, whatever spiritual wisdom there is, within the trilogy. But from my standpoint, yeah, I really did do this because I felt that I just had my way of service, at least at this stage of my life. At one time, it was a one-on-one type of thing. At this stage of my life, it's more like reaching a mass audience and hoping that I can just get them to think about the very fundamentals of life in a different way than they may be accustomed to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Very good. We did have some people that had some questions on the blog. So we just asked, if you have any questions, people, please feel free to type in your questions to Mr. Canova on the blog, and we'll see what happens there. But in the meantime, we've got some little chats going on and so forth in the chat room. So keep on chatting away, people. If you have any comments, please feel to post them there, and we'll continue this conversation. So, you recently won 2 awards, and I was just wondering, what has been your, I guess, biggest surprises as you've written this book? What have been some of the things, from people who've read your book or the media and so forth? What are some of your biggest surprises that you've experienced so far?
Well, I think that the most daunting task when I wrote this book was how to take very complex, ancient spiritual ideas that were written in original Greek or Coptic, which fortunately I do read Greek, so I was able to read some of them in the originals, to take these very complex ideas and translate them into a story that didn't end up being like a dull, preachy research, text. And I tried very hard to balance between making an entertaining story, because I don't care how spiritual you are. If you're going to read a fictional book and it's boring, you're not going to get to the part that you want to get to, because you're probably going to put it down and pick up something else. That's just an axiom of the literary world. So I kind of was waiting with bated breath as the story, as the book started to circulate, to see the reaction of different people. And I was extremely pleased. I'm not sure if I'd say surprised, but I was extremely pleased to see that people from all walks of life are picking this up. And, if you read, let's say, some of the reviews on Amazon.com, you get a full spectrum. You're getting some people there that, clearly are very spiritually clued in, but you're getting others who just enjoyed it for the pleasure of reading the book. Traditional Catholics who've read it and said, I thought this was going to be, I talked to my friends and they were abhorred when they heard of the idea of a female pope. How could that be? And reading the context of the book, everything seemed so believable. And that was probably the most pleasing thing to me, is to see something that I was so conscious of and worked so hard to balance, that it seems like that balance worked there, and it can be absorbed by a lot of different people. When I watched Star Wars, they had, in Star Wars, the whole thing about Luke, the Force is with you, and it became sort of part of pop culture. Well, in its own little way, Star Wars contributed to the idea that there was a force out there that people could tap into. Of course, they didn't go into it too deeply. The trilogy and Pope Annalisa go into it much more depth, and I think with with a lot more, clarity and insight to it. But it's still the same principle that I think that this book can be read by a wide variety of people, and each will absorb the message at their own level where they are at the time, and whatever, kind of help or insights they need, hopefully they can find it in this book.
That's good. So definitely, I get that feeling that you are not a controversial kind of person, number one. I can just feel that in the conversation. So I definitely don't get that that's your intention, to cause a ruckus or anything. It's more like, hey, let's get some wisdom. Let's in a different way. That's kind of maybe not your traditional way to get it across. And I think it's really cool and creative, and just really insightful of you to do that. So it's cool.
I was curious, Peter. I was curious too. I mean, I was almost feeling like maybe you tapped into a parallel universe that you may not even been aware of.
In terms of
in your book, you pick. There's so many universes that play out, so many possibilities that you may be the inspiration for your book. I mean. I believe
I think
it's
maybe
like
that's, and I believe people get threatened by books like this because they, in a deeper level, they, know that they know nothing.
Sometimes I think anytime people, lock into an identity of who they believe they are, and another belief system comes across that might not match up with their identity of who they think they are, it's threatening to them, because that means they have to change, and have to, look at themselves, or maybe look at their situation a little differently. And, in the whole scheme of things.
That's really very true what you said. I'll tell you something very interesting. We have some old family friends from the time I was young, and they are fundamentalists. And they found out about my book, and they wanted a copy of it, which I sent out to them with a huge disclosure statement in it saying, look, guys, I know how you feel about things, and this may not be your cup of tea. I just want to tell you right now. Well, they love the book. They can hardly wait to read the second one. I wrote in the afterword of the book something that I did address to more orthodox practitioners of religion, whether they're Jewish or Christian or whatever, in that the book was not meant to be an attack on people's existing beliefs, because if your beliefs are that entrenched, you're going to read the book and you're going to say, well, this is a lot of rubbish and I don't believe that anyway. If you have a little bit of an open mind to it, I think the book does present another vector of spirituality for people to look at. And Iggy, what you said about parallel universes, it's kind of true, because quantum physics really tells us that what exists outside there is potential, and what we focus on is actually what our minds and our hearts. And incidentally, that's something a lot of people in the spiritual community forget. They think of manifesting things, by creative, by their intention and their mind and affirmations, which are all good, but that's only half the equation. If we're going to talk about the female half, you must have that desire. You must have a deep desire in your heart, because desire is the fuel that gets you. The guidance system may be your rational mind, but the fuel that gets you to your objective is the desire. So if you have the desire and you have a clarity of if you've defined what you want by your rational means, then that's a powerful bullet that reaches into the world of potential and brings it into reality. And quantum physics essentially tells you the same thing. So, I'm hoping that some of that rubs off on people even with more orthodox orientations, and they can just get out of the box just a little bit to see that, this might be another possibility. And one thing I stress in this book is, my vision in this book, I'm not necessarily saying these are the way things are. I think that would be pretty arrogant and presumptive, because, there's so much mystery in the universe, and there's so much mystery to spirituality, that I think the best we can do is be in the road in a process. And I'm constantly changing. Things I used to believe, a year ago, I've changed I've changed a little bit on those things, and because I'm constantly growing in knowledge and awareness and experience, and so I'm not trying to pretend that what I'm presenting in this book is the be all and end all and some kind of a new religion that people ought to start following in place of what they have already. What I'm saying is take what you have already, consider it a stepping stone, use the background that brought you to where you are, but now here's something else you might want to think about and digest with your meal.
Yes. That's how I'm taking this conversation, absolutely. And I believe our listeners, people that tune into With Insights Radio, get that message, definitely. And for all you listeners out there that did not catch this broadcast or are listening later, and if you find this message compelling, pass it on. I am actually going to recommend this book for a women's reading group that I belong to. And I think this would be it's so cool to just talk on the archetypal meaning, and just so I can just see the richness of this book has to offer just talking to you, because, just getting to know you, Peter, you've got I can feel you've got a lot of depth to you. You're pretty lived it, experienced it. And some of the things that you're saying are just really resonating with me tonight. So I'm really excited about this. So one thing, I know you don't want to give away too much of the book, because, of course, we want people to go out there and read the book. I am just curious, and I just kind of already know you're not going to tell me. How did Pope Annalisa, being in this entrenched, I guess, and I shouldn't say that word, entrenched is so yeesh, so dramatic, Rosa, but I guess, how did she, what did she do to win the hearts of the cardinals and everything like that to even get into that position?
Well, let me use this as a segue to give the listeners a little bit of a quick overview of at least the plot line of the book.
Sure.
Pope Annalisa is really two stories. We've talked a lot about the spiritual side of it, but let's talk about the other side of it. It's a thriller, and it's set in the near future. Annalisa is a miracle-working African nun in the year 2025, and it's a world where resources of oil and water are scarce. Iran has gone nuclear. Friction between great powers is close to boiling over. And in her healings down in Africa, Annalisa is really acting outside of the control of the church. And some Muslims are also converting because of her healing. So she's upsetting the power structure of both the Catholic Church and the Islamic terrorists in Nigeria. And Nigeria, even today, it has always been a flashpoint of tensions between Christianity and Islam. It's the largest, it's the most populous country in Africa, and about half the country is Muslim, and the other half is a Christian. And it's kind of the borderline, let's say, between a lot of the tensions that are happening between the religions. But there's a body of Catholic prophecy that's predicted the rise of a great heretic who is going to destroy the church from within and lead the world to ruin. So many of the cardinals, when they hear about what she's doing, these incredible healings that she's performing in Africa, are immediately suspicious of her. It's through. I won't give you the exact details because that would be giving away something in the book. It's
spoiled again.
Yeah, it's through a series of events.
I'm teasing you.
Beginning with her healing the existing pope from some severe illness. She's brought into the ranks of the church, and as you can imagine, she's brought in grudgingly. I think probably there's only a couple people that were really supportive of bringing her into the priesthood. But the real event that launches her into the papacy is something that occurs in the Sistine Chapel when the Pope dies, and there's a conclave to elect a new Pope. Something very astonishing happens in the Sistine Chapel, and I'm going to leave you hanging at that point because that's sort of the linchpin that launches off the rest of the plotline of the book.
That's cool. No, I'm seriously going to recommend this book for our reading group, so that's okay. I was going to just try to see what I could squeeze out. No, just kidding. Oh, that's good. That's good. That keeps us going. Iggy, do we have any callers? Any questions? Anybody?
Yeah, 1 second. Let me patch one through here real quick.
Okay.
Hello, caller, you're online.
Hi, my name is Cindy, and I just have a very quick question. Mr. Canova, is your book anything like the Da Vinci Code? And if it's not, how is it different?
Yes, Cindy. I have had people ask me that question before. That it has superficial similarities to the Da Vinci Code in that it's a thriller and it deals with religious/spiritual topics, and probably the only other tie between the two books is that the personage of Mary Magdalene plays a role in both books. The difference is that in the Da Vinci Code really kind of goes along the bloodline theory, which is that Mary Magdalene and Jesus, had progeny, had children, and that Mary was depicted in the Da Vinci Code as the Holy Grail, which is the receptacle of Jesus' children. In my book, Mary Magdalene is also the Holy Grail, but it takes on a much different meaning. Mary is the Holy Grail of Jesus' gnosis, the secret spiritual traditions that he taught orally, which were obscured by the church, and of which Mary was the greatest proponent and understood them with the most clarity. That's why she was his most trusted disciple and his companion. So Mary in my book is also the Holy Grail, but really the repository not of his children, but the repository of something much more important, which was this spiritual knowledge of which Jesus was teaching that was part of the whole continuum that went back through ancient Sumeria and all the ancient cultures. And I think that puts her as a woman in a much more important role than just being a childbearer.
Well, thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it did. Thank you very much.
Excellent question, caller. Thank you for calling.
Very good. You'll take another one?
Sure.
Yeah, we have a couple minutes left. Caller, are you there?
Yes. Am I here?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, you're on with Insights Radio.
You're on. Do you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to thank Peter for validating some of my own research in my own life, especially with talking about us all being part of the one creator, or God source, or whatever you'd like to call it. Just wanted to thank you, Peter.
Well, thank you for sharing the sentiment.
Yeah,
cool.
I was really amazed at some of the things I found, and you were talking about the same things, and it's going to be a really interesting awakening for people when it starts to come forth more.
Yeah, I think that we're in the age right now where that whole quickening of knowledge is going to be accelerated. I think that's a lot of what 2012 was about. And incidentally, you've probably seen the Hollywood version of 2012, which is that we're all gone, the world's going to end, and well, actually, the world is going to end, but not that way. The world
is going to end as we know it.
the old knowledge base and power structures are going to end. And incidentally, that's a lot of what Annalisa represents, isn't it? Really, she's the end of the male line of popes. She's the beginning. Just by that fact alone, that she becomes pope is the beginning of a new way. So that's kind
absolutely.
of reflective of what we're talking about.
So
very
cool.
Good.
Such an appropriate time as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I might mention at this point. Let me go from the sublime to the crass at this point, just to tell the readers that the book is currently right now. The publication date of the book is June 2010, but the advanced copies of the book, I did an advanced test market, and that's the hardcover book that's available on my website right now, and the paperback version is currently available through Amazon.com or Borders.com. BarnesandNoble.com. All you have to do is go to the Amazon or Borders sites and type Pope Annalisa into the search bar, and you're able to purchase the paperback version. The hardcover version is going to be coming out June 10th, and I'm having my big publicity push has actually already started and centered in New York, but culminating on June 1st. And I was very happy, as you've mentioned already. I just found out the book won 2 Nautilus Awards today, which was very timely, and I'll find out next month whether or not it's won the gold award. But anyway, just for the readers, if you want the softcover version, it's already available. If you want to wait for the hardcover version, which I greatly appreciate to help my boost in the literary world, that will be available in bookstores by June 1st.
All right.
Excellent. Well, wonderful. Mr. Canova, it was a great pleasure. Iggy and I are very grateful to have you on With Insights Radio. You sharing your story, get to know you, the person, the author behind the trilogy, that actually, but the first one, Pope Annalisa.
Yes, and let me thank you for having me on the show, and thank the listeners for participating in this and allowing me to share what I hope that they'll eventually read.
Sure. Is there any final thoughts that you'd like to leave our listeners with at this moment in time?
I would have to assume that from the nature of your show, you have people who are pretty advanced in their their spiritual journey. And the only thing that I can emphasize to you is that I know along the way there are setbacks. I've had plenty of them. I know struggling to birth this book, you cannot believe what it's like. I think I'm beginning to figuratively understand what women's labor pains are like trying to birth this book.
That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah.
But don't give up on your journey, because it really is a process. The important thing is that sometimes it may seem to you like the answers that you thought were answers. You change your mind. You say, "Wow, should I throw out the baby with the bathwater? Is everything I believed in for nothing? Because now I've changed my perspective." Don't view it that way. I've been through that. I don't know how many times in the course of this book. It's a journey. It's a process, and the important thing is you're on that road.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
We want to thank you again. I mean, it was awesome. It was good to hear and just sit back and listen.
Thank you all.
So super.
Okay.
Thank you.
Talk
Have
to you
a good
soon,
evening.
then.
We'll talk to you
Bye-bye.
soon. Bye. Wow. Another great show with Insights Radio, speaking of the divine feminine. And actually during the sweat, it was I believe it was, I'm not sure which door actually it was, but I just started, a form of channeling, I guess. But I did start, there's a lot of divine, I shouldn't say a lot, but a majority of the people that were in the sweat were women, but it was for the most part pretty, a little more women. But there was a point where I felt like Mary Magdalene energy was there with us in that sweat.
Wow.
I don't know if you remember me saying that, but I kept on saying Magdalena. I didn't say Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
It was
Right.
I'm like, I don't know where that was coming from. And coincidentally, we're speaking about this topic today, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's pretty
work.
interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting how things just come to our show sometimes, and then how the highest purpose is always served when we're doing our show. We kind of follow a script, but I'm going to stop writing scripts and notes, because it never goes that way. It goes the way it's supposed to go. I'm just going to sit back and relax like I did today and just enjoy it. And Peter was really enjoyable. I really enjoyed listening to him. It's almost like I was kind of listening to myself a bit, because I talk about a lot of these things, a lot of these different topics. So it's kind of cool to see that there's a brother out there, who I resonate with, and so it was pretty cool. It was a nice journey for me to sit and listen.
Ditto. It's always enjoyable. We have amazing guests on With Insights Radio. Join us next week on With Insights Radio. Iggy, what's going on next week?
Well, next week we will have an open forum, so you can call in and talk about whatever you want to talk about, holistic, anything spiritual, and we're going to actually be giving readings. And so if you need a reading, tap into the universe. Just teach us what you need us to tell you, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see you next week, Monday, 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to our show. We really appreciate it.
And much love, and ho'oponopono.
Infinite love and gratitude. Till next time.